welcome to today's live stream. There were a few questions on the Facebook group about making garden markers, and I thought I would show you a few different approaches to how to make these. So I see there are people from Missouri, someone from San Diego, and someone from Louisiana. So cool. Thank you so much for coming. I'm glad to have you here and, wanting to learn and play it with this software. So here, one of the posts on Facebook. Oh, someone from the UK. Cool. Hi. So there was this post on Facebook about these, how to make these garden markers, this type of project. And someone else had other pictures on how to do it. And actually, Ralph, whose username is Layer Paper Art, he made a cool response where he actually made a project where you can like type your plant and it creates a nice marker. So I think we want to look into that one for a little bit. But I also wanted to show you an approach just like straight up from scratch. So early on, a couple of years ago, we actually made a cuddle template for garden markers. Actually, I have it right here. And so this one is super simple. And you can see it uses this type of font that is called the stencil type of font. That means it creates cuts. So whenever it kind of chops the letters in such a way that you can like cut them, but like not all the holes will fall through. So this was one of my earlier videos. Actually, there's a YouTube video about how to make them. So, but I think so far there have been some improvements to the software, or some like different ways of doing things. So I think it's kind of nice to revisit this idea. So let's get started with an example. I'm gonna go here to Cuddle. I'm gonna go to my projects, and I'm gonna start a new blank project, just to show you like a particular approach. So I'm gonna call this one Garden Marker 1. And let's start from the like simplest approach, and then we kind of like build on that one. And there might be some repetition on what I do, but like hopefully it's an opportunity to learn. So the way I did, or the way we did the early one was we started with just the shape of the marker. So I'm gonna grab a rectangle, and I'm gonna, there's this trick for whenever you scale things, they excuse me, by default, they scale from the center, as you can see, but you can actually change that. You can change the scaling from, meaning the origin for the scaling, by holding the command key. And when you hold the command key, the origin center, the transform center kind of gets highlighted. You can see it there. And I'm going to move it to the right of the rectangle and place everything at the origin again. And so you'll see that when I scale it, it scales, this part, the origin, just stays where I want it. And then it scales on the x-axis. That's just like a quick trick. So the idea here is that I want something that is about 6 inches long. And let's start one that is about 1 inch wide. And then I saw the example I have here. This one doesn't have a point, but I think it's kind of nice to give it a point. Where was I working here? And so I added a triangle. You search for triangle. I place it here where I want it. I'm gonna rotate it. Holding the shift key allows me to rotate in kind of whole increments. You can see, so I want 90 degrees, and I'm just gonna place it right there, and I'm gonna stretch it. So the corner of the triangle matches the corner of the rectangle. It's your basic stake. I'm gonna select everything, and I'm gonna apply the Boolean union or weld. So that just welds the two shapes. So I have a single shape here to work with. And the way I did that one before is that I added excuse me, I rounded the corners for that one. Just a little bit less. I think it looks a little neater. And then the font, if we look for text, there is a version called stencil font or stencil text. And so that one, I'm going to place it again at the origin, but I actually want the alignment to be at the center. So, sorry, that would be that's the horizontal alignment. I want the vertical alignment to be on the middle. And I think this would be my very basic one. So it's just a stencil font. There is a section here in the fonts category that lets you choose different stencil fonts. And I don't know, I like the default one. That one. Anyway, so I think the final touches for this one that's very quick is that I probably want I want these to be two different cuts. So I'm gonna change the stroke for the outside cut to be red. And of course, we want to make it parametric, right? We want to make it into a way to change the text. So I'm gonna go to the text here, and when I click here, I can extract this parameter. So that would be my plant name. And so the cool thing about that is that now I can simply type it here. So chives or onion. And so this is my, version 1, or I just call it the steak. And so because I left these as a local parameter, I get this kind of handy way of just say I want to cut a bunch, so I can drag it onto. I can drag that one I made into my canvas, and I can drag multiples, and each one of those can have a different name. So something like squash. And chives. So you get the idea. I think probably you might run into trouble with that, with those descenders. Might have to do something about that. Perhaps this is one of those where like it's gonna look better if it's all uppercase. But anyway, you get the idea. So here, if you want to cut a bunch of different steaks, you can always like drag a bunch, and maybe you're gonna stick with uppercase. Parsley. So I think this is like, kind of a review of that basic approach. But I want to try and do other variations. So let me do another one. So actually, I might just do it in the same project. So I call this one version 1. Let's do version 2. So once again, I'm going to be a little bit repetitive, but this might help some people kind of understand it a bit better. So I'm going to drag a rectangle again to start with. I'm going to again change the transform center to the midpoint on the left and just place it at the origin. So for this one, I thought I would do something again like a 6-inch, but I wanted it narrow, maybe like 1/2 inch. And once again, I like the I like the pointy end. I'm gonna do the triangle. Let's search for that triangle again. Put it here. Rotate it 90 degrees. Move point to point here. What I mean by that is that sometimes when you're dragging things, you want a point, like the corner, to match the other point. So you'll see that it's kind of highlighted red right there. Make it spiky. Join it again, or weld it with the Boolean union. In this case, I kind of like the rounded corners again. but of course you can have different stylistic choices, a little bit less, so it's still a little spiky. And so the approach I wanted with this one was, since the last time we added this weld and score modifier, which I think works really well. But in this case, I'm gonna use a different type of font or text type. I'm gonna try the connected text. I'll explain why in a moment. So I'm gonna place it here at the origin, and I want the vertical alignment to be the middle. And with text, you're always kind of guessing things, you know, like essentially with text, what makes sense is more visual than precision. So in this case, I kind of want these to be a little bit higher. Actually, let's type a plant name just to make it kind of more visible. And let's do another sort of playful font. The one I was looking before was called Clonica. So here's the trick. What I want to do is I want it big, just to experiment with a slightly different look. I want it like roughly centered on the spike, and so that's the general look. But the treatment I want is the following. This is connected, and the text will have an option here called welding. So I selected the text, and I get all the different options for that particular. And so what I want to do is change the welding. By default, it just welds everything. But then I'm going to change it to weld nothing. And so as you can see, it's still this connected text is still making the effort of connecting the letters. And particularly in this case, the I, the dot for the I, if I were to do it without the connected text, that one would just be kind of floating. But if I select the weld nothing, I get the chance to use the weld and score. So I'm going to select now the text and the spike, and I'm going to apply that weld and score, which I think would be an attractive look. Or I haven't necessarily seen one of these because it's probably kind of labor intensive to do without that kind of convenient modifier. So yeah, a slightly different look. And once again, with this one, we can do the same. We can like extract the text as a parameter. So I'm going to select the text again here in my inspector. I'm going to extract it as a parameter. I'm going to be organized. I'm going to call it plant name. And the beauty of this is that once again, I can do the same trick where like I can drag it. I can drag multiple instances as sort of like related, I wouldn't call it clones, but maybe like related brothers and sisters. And then each one of those can have its own. And then we get these neatly, this is all gonna cut as a single piece, but the scores in between the letters are just gonna make it readable. And then one last one as an example here. What do I do? Squash. So I think this is an example of a sort of bolder, kind of more intense look. And actually, so I've been doing, I did the squash. I don't know, consistency for me is important. So I did all uppercase for the first one. Let's see what this one looks, what does it look like with all uppercase? Kind of blocky. I think this particular design looks better like this with lowercase but capitalized. That's my take on that one. Okay, but let's yeah, so there's a question. Can you make what is going to cut red? I believe I can. Let me see. I think if I select all of these and I change the stroke to red. Yeah. Let me repeat it. I kind of went too fast there. I I selected my object, and here I selected everything, and the stroke is right here on the right, and I changed the stroke to red. And kind of very nicely, the weld and score has it separated. So the score remains blue. Related question. Related subject here is that you can also change the color of the score, because not everyone uses the same color. So if I go to the weld and score modifier here in the inspector, you'll see that I get the options for weld and score, and I can actually change that one. So if I want it to be purple, that's an option. You get the idea. You can. I'm gonna get the blue because I think it's a little more readable on screen. But yeah, so that's how I changed. I changed the outside color by selected everything, changing the stroke color, and the weld, the score in particular, you select the weld and score. Cool, so that's a cool one. Thank you for asking the question. Which font am I using for this one? I used this one called Aclonica. Because it's a related question with the font. Of course, we can always extract the font as a parameter if we want it to have it, selectable by the user. Let's say if we go to the connected text here, and then if I see the font, I can always click the 3 dots and then extract as parameter, and we can see it right there. So I think that may be convenient in general. Every time I select any of these, I can see the font here. And the way it's constructed right now, I can actually change the fonts per stake. We can spend a lot of time thinking about fonts. Anyway, so let's move on to the other example that I think was a little similar. I wanted to try something similar to what they did here. Like if I look at it carefully, I've been looking at it carefully. I think they made this choice where this line, you can see that goes across. So I think the cutout for the stake is all the same size, which gives it a certain consistency, but also, as you can see, the word cucumber and the word basil, like the letters obviously change shape just to, thickness and size to accommodate to that square. So I wanted to try and replicate that one just because it was the example that was kind of offered. So I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to call it version 3. I could title this one Speed Run on Garden Stakes. So once again, I'm going to start with a rectangle. I'm going to select transform center to the, I guess it's not strictly necessary to do that, but I'm going to go for it. Let's do another 6-inch. I'm going to grab myself a triangle just to make it spiky. Also optional. I'm going to grab it from the point, connect it to the other point, and I'm going to click the triangle and stretch it until it matches this corner. Of course, you can also stretch it the other way if you wanted like a particularly spiky, more pointy. And I'm going to try a more visual approach with this one, which is something that sometimes helps understand what's happening. So what I mean by that is we could do it with a Boolean union and then subtract the little cutout, but let's do it in a single run by selecting the shape, and I'm going to give it a fill. I'm going to change it to black. And I'm going to change this one. I'm going to also give it a fill, change it to black. So I feel like this kind of gives you a very clear sense of what's happening. And then to do the cutout, I'm going to make that one white. So I'm going to just grab a rectangle, change the fill to white. And if I put it on top, yeah. And so once again, I'm going to do this trick where I select this one, I hold Command, think Control on Windows, and I'm gonna move that transform center to the corner. I'm gonna match it here. And let's say I want this one to be half of the existing one. And I'm kind of just visually kind of see what works for me here. Yeah, like 2.5 seems like a legit. And so right now these are all separate shapes, but in order to do everything at once, I'm gonna select them all. And then there is this modifier called flatten. And so what flatten does is that everything that is the same color, in this case black, gets joined, and everything that's white, that's in front of it, gets subtracted. So it's like a quick way of just doing this, this kind of creating complex shapes out of like simpler ones. And while I have flatten selected, if I select the stroke result, it just shows me the actual outline that we ended up with, which is kind of convenient. So there are multiple approaches to how to fit text in here. I think one that works relatively well is there's this option called warped text. I just type here in the search, warped. And so there are multiple options. There's of course like wavy text and whatnot, but there is this one called custom, which kind of allows me to select any shape, but the default is just a rectangle. And so I'm just gonna place that rectangle where I want it to be. I'm actually just gonna stretch it to fit the existing cutout on my stake. And I think I wanna try a different font. This one by default is one of the displays, and so I'm gonna select a sans serif. And maybe that one's a little chunkier. And I think, the reference I have here, they were using all uppercase letters. So I think I'm gonna stick to that. So as you can see, what this warp text, it tries to, I'll just do all uppercase. It tries to fit all the letters. It kind of stretches them to fit inside that square that we selected. And so what I actually want, if I zoom in, let me make more space. If I were to zoom in really closely, you can see that they're not kind of joined. So I'm just gonna move it down a tiny bit so it's touching on the bottom, and a little bit to the right, so it's touching on the right. I could even stretch it. And the thing, one option would be to just join it, but I kind of like the look of the well done score. So I'm gonna select everything and apply that well done score. And we ended up with something similar, but we get this kind of like blocky, that kind of blocky look with the cutout over here. Yeah, and once again, someone asked how to change the, let's see if this works here. I want to change the stroke to red. Yeah, and so we do the outside cutout with red, and then we still get the stroke, the score, sorry, with blue. And so version 3 works quite similar. We can drag multiple instances of it. Oh, not yet. I forgot that one step. I need to check the text. Let's make it a little bigger. So it's, and then I need to extract that one as a parameter. I can leave it as text. That's good enough. And now each one of these should have the instance, should be a different instance that can have different that looks all right. This one, so that's a slightly different approach. So now I have like, essentially 3 different looks for for markers that you can try out. I think this warp text is not the ideal version. I think it can fail in certain ways. Because, for example, if we use a very long word, like it looks okay. I think we can run into trouble if the font has like big descenders, because of the way descenders is when a letter has like a little thing poking below the baseline. So squash. Yeah, I think this one is one that I was thinking. This kind of runs into trouble with the descenders. So the which is my segue to look at Ralph's version, because he actually solved it. So let me open it again. I think now that you've seen kind of like the different approaches I took, understanding what he did is going to make a bit more sense. Well, hopefully. So here's just the base kind of like README kind of template look. So he let's look at the cool work that Raf, aka Layer Paper Art, did. So check this out. Like you can type the way he did it. You can type anything here, and it gets. It doesn't even have to be lowercase or sorry. It doesn't have to be uppercase. If you type anything, it gets converted to uppercase, like onion, which is cool. It's a cool. It's a cool trick. And then look how as the text expands, the cutout expands, which is like another cool approach. And then tulip, something like tulip. Let's talk about flowers. And then additionally, he created this kind of vertical line, so you can drag the number to sort of match, to make the vertical line work. So the cool thing with any of these templates that are both created by the Cuddle team and the ones that are created by the community is that you can use them just as they are. We can always just start using this one and then hit download SVG and we get a nice SVG. He also created a nice file name. We can download that and then we can cut it. And then we can always open them in the Cuddle editor and look and see what they look like. So I click that up here. And so I want to see how he made it work. So perhaps a little bit more advanced, but I think what he's doing is it's calculated. Wendy's asking me which font is this one. Oh, but let's look at this font. This particular one is Albert Sans. But what I did notice with this particular version is that the descenders are taken care of. So if I do something like squash, he made it so it's this line is always consistent, and then we can always adjust this vertical line to make it fit. And the way he calculated that is that he created this parameter that tells him the number of letters, the number of letters that you type in here, and then he multiplies that by a certain amount, which is the amount of the vertical line. That's just kind of like a quick code thing. I suppose just to finish this one off, it's always possible to like go ahead and right now I'm making kind of changes to this project to see how it works. But if I want to save it to my own folder and to my own projects folder and play with it, I can always click here and copy this project. So I'm going to do that to make some changes. So I think this one is so cool. I like the way he did it. Perhaps the only change I would make is that I just like the look of that well done score. So instead of this Boolean union here, I'm just going to delete it actually. I would change that to just a straight up well done score. So now, those letters are joined to that main stake or marker, and then I just get kind of like the more readability. And even this vertical line can be kind of closed in for kind of like a cool stylistic choice. So cool. So I hope this gave you some ideas about all the different kind of markers that are possible. I think I use roughly the same techniques, but there's a lot of room for experimentation. And definitely there's a bit of room for improvement on how these particular text cuts out. I could get more ideas for that. But anyway, hopefully this was a cool way to do it, and it gives you some things to play with. So thanks for coming. Oh, there's a question. Is there a way to change the units from inches to millimeters? Yes, there is. I'm gonna run for 1 minute. There are two ways actually. On any given project, you can go to units and settings, and then these units here will change the global units used to millimeters if I wanted to. Alternatively, you can always type inches or millimeters in any given object. So for example, here in version 1, let's look at it. The rectangle, the scale, in this case, if I type inches, oops, sorry. That scale now it's in inches, right? Because I can select it. It gives me this kind of like extra selector. And then here I can change it to millimeters, and it will just do the conversion. But the better, I mean, there is no better way. Some of us work in inches and millimeters at the same time. So that's why, there is this kind of built-in thing that you can like kind of go back and forth between units. But if you want to work in a single unit, it's nice if you start your project by selecting the units to what you want, say millimeters. And that way, everything you make is going to be by default in millimeters. So you see how it appears here. Cool. So one last quick question. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, cool. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for coming. Bye.